All right, welcome everybody to this session of Starknet House. I think it's the last session. Yeah, you can use the chat to ask questions. You can also, at the end, ask me any questions you would like. And yeah, I'd say we can get right in. And I would also like to thank Topology for organizing this event. It's been great to see so far, and it's great to be here. So I think we can start. All right, so today's session is going to be about the ins and outs of community-driven initiatives on Starknet. We will talk about this in the context of MatchboxDAO. And to give you just a bit of context about what MatchboxDAO is, MatchboxDAO is an ecosystem DAO on Starknet, and we want to support OnChain Games on Starknet. So we are a community-focused incubator for OnChain Games on Starknet, just to give you just a bit of context. And I will kind of outline the history of MatchboxDAO and how we started off, how we evolved, how we iterated and reiterated on the concept, all in the context of the community and how we involved them. So I think we can just get right into the humble beginnings of MatchboxDAO. And yeah, to start off, the founder of MatchboxDAO, his name is Jonathan. We call him Yoni. He had the idea, he had Starknet on his radar for quite some time already, but Starknet then eventually became ready to build on with a testnet, and Cairo, it all matured a bit. And so Yoni had the idea to come up with games on Starknet that feature hidden information mechanics. And that's already very niche, as you can tell. And if you're not familiar with hidden information mechanics, it's very simple. Just think of a card game like poker, and all that means is, the enemy should not be able to see, like the opponent should not be able to see your hand, right? So that just constitutes hidden information. And on Starknet, as a ZK rollup, you can implement privacy. And so he came up with the idea to build games like poker on chain on Starknet to for the first time be able to hide information from the eyes of your opponent. And so Yoni came up with this idea, and at the time I was writing some blog posts for StarkWare around Starknet, and I was also writing a newsletter covering Starknet. And so Yoni read this newsletter, and he kind of reached out to me, and he asked me what I think of the project and if I would like to be involved, and how we could push this forward. And so he reached out to me, and he kind of pitched me the idea, and we discussed for a bit, and I said, okay, I'll hop on board. And right after that, we basically recognized that focusing on hidden information mechanics is a bit too specific. And so we widened the focus to on-chain games in general. And I will explain a bit about on-chain games at a later stage, because there's a lot to talk about with on-chain games. But this is like the brief rundown of our very humble beginnings, how everything started. Someone says my voice has a slight echo. I'm not sure why. But I don't have any sound on. I don't hear myself, so I hope it's tolerable. Okay, let me continue. So these were our very humble beginnings. And now let's see the first idea behind Matchbox. Like, we had to talk about who builds what, how do we do this, how do we structure things, how do we do all of this. So we had this idea. We first of all, we had a community call on Matchbox. So we organized all of the game desks we knew in Starknet, all of the interested people, all of the people we had connections with on Starknet. And we organized a community call, and we kind of discussed on this, how we should structure this whole project. So the initial idea was to become a collective of developers and game designers to basically, very simply, help each other out. So with on-chain gaming is a very underexplored kind of niche. It just simply wasn't possible in this way before. But Starknet actually enables us to play around and experiment a lot with on-chain concepts. So it was a natural fit that we just bring together these people into one place and have a very good environment for them to discuss and talk about different approaches, different concepts, different ideas. So we had the idea down. Next, we had to discuss the structure. And so what I mean by structure is, the game desks that have been on Starknet at that point, almost all of them had already had like an existing project. So for example, there were projects like Realms or Brick, that were established projects. So we didn't have to incentivize them to build anything because they were already funded, they already built stuff. So when I talk about structure, we were talking about, okay, let's imagine you're a game dev and you read about Starknet, you read about the scalability, especially the computational scalability that enables on-chain logic to run. How can we support these new devs that come into Starknet? And so the initial structure we came up with was to simply give out grants to these people, to these new builders, to support them. And these grants would be approved by the experienced game devs and the experienced project leads that are already in the Starknet ecosystem and that would now be part of MatchboxDAO. And so the result of this initial idea, these initial explorations, was that Matchbox became a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, and we attracted a bunch of game devs on Starknet, which worked out really well. And now, this was a very early, very initial stage. We didn't flesh out many of these things because things take time to really come up with a proper concept. And so let's talk about a bit about initial successes and initial failures. So we had this grants program in place, and we gave out money to game devs to initially support them to build interesting stuff and interesting concepts and interesting games. Now, nothing ever really goes perfectly right away. I think that's, everybody knows that. So with this grants program, we had some people that, really delivered on what they wanted to do. And as two examples of this, like there's more examples, but as two examples of this, I've included a screenshot of No Game, and on the right side, you can see a screenshot of Odyssey. And these teams really deliver. They're really passionate. They really want to build and explore concepts and experiment. But with things like grants programs, there's also always the danger that some of the grantees don't deliver at all, or just deliver partly, or they just fizzle out at some point, or just do it part-time, or there's a bunch of things that can happen. And this is like the case with every grants program, and it happened to us as well. So we had some teams that, or some persons as well, that kind of fizzled out. They did some stuff which was interesting, but it kind of fizzled out. But we also had teams that really delivered. So to give you a bit more context on No Game, No Game is a space game. It's a browser game, and it's entirely on-chain on Starknet. And maybe you're familiar with a game called O-Game, and this O-Game it used to be a big hit in the early 2000s. It was this browser game centered in a galaxy, and you could own planets and build a space fleet of ships, and you could mine and extract resources and build up your bases and fight other players. It was a really, really big hit in the early 2000s, and this project aims to bring that hit back on Starknet, but it doesn't just emulate it, but it also wants to add new concepts that you can do on Starknet. So for example, you could add on-chain physics into the mix. You could you can do more stuff with account abstraction. You can you can be more interoperable and more composable with different games, different projects. So the goal is to bring back this O game and then enrich it with features that you can do on Starknet. And on the right side, we see Odyssey. And Odyssey is very interesting because it takes a kind of meta approach to games, in the sense that it's a big galaxy and you can mint a planet in this galaxy and you can entirely customize that planet to your liking. And so this is basically very interesting because the idea behind this is basically to offer Starknet projects a planet, and they can then use that planet to their liking. So they can do anything with the planet. They can create a minigame in it. They can, customize it. They can invite other people to it. And I think it's a really neat idea. And there's a lot of things you can do in terms of composability and exploring different avenues to take this in. So it's it's very early still for Odyssey. No Game is a bit more mature by now, but we are super happy to support these builders. So the lesson we had from this is basically, if you get great people into the DAO, then you can expect great results. And what I mean by great people are people that are truly passionate, that have the proper mindset and skill set to approach these kind of projects. It's really, in the end, it's all a people thing. If you get passionate people, they will be passionate. If you get people that just come for a quick cash injection for the grants program, like, I'm not saying that people do that intentionally or anything, but if you get people that aren't like super committed, then you cannot necessarily expect the kind of results that you get otherwise. So that's, I think, our biggest takeaway at this stage. All right, so let's see how we progress. So community is a big part of Matchbox. And we spent a lot of time on figuring out how we can structure this and how we can do things. So at this point in Matchbox's evolution, we had a Discord server, and we had all of these game devs, all of these people, all of these people that are super interested in on-chain gaming and exploring different concepts. And so what could we do to basically create a environment for them where they can discuss and ideate and just figure things out, because on-chain gaming, as I said, is a very unexplored realm as of now. So we came up with the idea to host a weekly developer call, and in this weekly developer call, pretty much anything goes. Anything that has anything to do with on-chain gaming, you can come on and you can talk about it. So that ranges from just discussing ideas, concepts, approaches, to offering or asking for help with anything, like game design, game mechanics, tokenomics, front-end design, Cairo, especially Cairo, since it's a new language, it might be difficult to get into this. It's also still an immature language if you compare it to languages like Solidity. So, there's just a lot of natural synergy and mutual beneficialism, I think, if that's the word, where you bring these people together and they can just discuss and hash all of these things out. So this is still ongoing to this day. And we also do on the side workshops, Twitter spaces, content writing, in workshops, we bring on people that, that build tooling for Starknet. So we've had, for example, Starknet JS or Starknet React, stuff like that. It's just a great way to, educate people and provide that added value. We did Twitter spaces to, to reach out to more of the kind of normie side of things, to get retail interested in on-chain games. I think that's a big, it's a big part of what we should do, and that's why we do it. Because if we believe that on-chain games are the next big thing, which we very much believe, then it's important to, get retail interested, get them involved, get them educated on what the benefits are, what you can do, and what's going on. And another part of this effort is just content writing to spread the message, right? So that means, writing Twitter threads, but also writing, long form blog posts about more in-depth things. It all goes hand in hand. It's all part of what you have to do to educate people, to get them on board. So as a result of this effort, which, wasn't easy to pull off, we have at least 20 attendees for each developer call we host every single week. And we are pretty proud of that. If you think about this, it may not sound like much, but for a DAO in the middle of a bear market, after everything crashed, things imploded, play to earn is massively in the critique, if you look at Axie Infinity and their renting system. So in a bear market where prices are down, people lose interest, having a base of 20 people that, make it to each dev call, that's pretty solid. That's pretty solid. So we're really proud of that. And I haven't talked about the hackathon yet. It just recently concluded. You may have heard of it. In this hackathon, we actually had over 70 teams that participated, but 55 teams actually submitted a project. So we're also really surprised at these numbers. So these aren't just single devs, but most of them were actually teams of devs. And to see this kind of participation in a admittedly niche area, which is on-chain gaming, on a on a blockchain that is an alpha, and mainnet alpha, Starknet, that's pretty impressive. That's really impressive. So that really caught us off guard to see that amount of participation. We held a Twitter space for hackathon to kick it off, and it had like 1K people that tuned in and just listened in on what we were doing and what we were up to. So that's really cool. This encompasses the community. There's more to this that I will get into in just a minute. And at the top you can see a screenshot of our YouTube channel where we we upload every single dev call, every single workshop we do, every single community call, any call with the hackathons that we do. It's all up there. Most of these also have notes. So if you miss a dev call, if you miss a hackathon workshop, it's all on YouTube. Most of them have notes as well. So if you miss them, you will have context on what has been happening, what has been going on. We just think it's important so that people, people have busy schedules. So if you miss it, you've got all of the information in one place. All right. So let's take a look at becoming sustainable and what I mean by that. So what did we want to do at Matchbox? We wanted to support builders that build cool stuff, cool games on Starknet. How did we do it so far at this point? We gave out grants. How is that sustainable? Well, it's not really, right? If you give out grants, you would have to accompany that with a legal agreement that would entitle you to some amount of the revenue that game would generate, or some kind of agreement. And so we didn't have that. So what do we do about it, right? We came up with a full-fledged incubation program where the DAO owns a stake in the projects that we incubate. And so that means, so we have a free-tiered incubation program that we just recently finished to come up with. So now it's finished. It's a full-fledged curriculum, and it's divided into 3 stages. In stage 1, you are a single dev, and you have some kind of idea for an on-chain game or primitive or game mechanic or any kind of GameFi thing that runs on-chain. And that's great. And we want to have you in Matchbox. And so the way we would go about supporting you is we would basically give you access to the entire Discord. So we would introduce you to people. We would connect you to people. We would introduce your project, your idea. You can come to the dev call, talk about it. You will get feedback from all of the devs. They will criticize what they think is a bad idea. They will, give you feedback as for which direction to move into. And this is really the most valuable thing you can give to a single dev that has an idea, right? He needs feedback. He needs to think about it. He needs to iron out where he wants to go and what exactly he wants to do. So we provide that time and that opportunity to come to the dev call and present your idea. Now, in stage 2, once you have kind of fleshed out your original idea and you have a better idea of where you want to take things, at that point, we would help you find a co-founder or find team members that would want to work with you on that project. It's always better to have more people in a project because you're not going to you're just going to be stressed out of your mind if you take this on yourself. So we help you find a co-founder, we help you find team members, and the goal then is to work on a MVP, on a minimum viable product. So, get some code going, get some things working, and have a proof of concept. At this point, we will also provide you with grants. These grants will be based on strict milestones. It will not be a lump sum of cash. Instead, you will have to complete strict milestones, and we did this to become more sustainable. And at this point, we would also help you found a company that would be the entity behind that project, and at that point we would also sign some kind of agreement where we would, the MatchboxDAO, the DAO would get a stake in that project. Now, once you have done all of that, you would move up into stage 3. And at stage 3, you would have a very clear vision of where you want to go, a very clear roadmap. You would have a co-founder and teammates, and you would be full-time working on this product. In this stage, we provide you with full support. So that means you will get much more time committed from us, committed to figuring out exactly what you need, right? So there's no one size fits all. Different teams and projects will have different needs. For example, there may be some teams that have done projects before, so they have more experience, they need less help. But there are also many people who are just devs, they need help with pretty much everything else. So how to set up a company, how to run business operations, how to come up with a pitch deck, how to come up with sustainable tokenomics, anything like that, we are going to provide you with full support. And we will connect you to the right people for that. Within the DAO, there's a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of different skill sets, different expertise that the people in the DAO have. So we will be able to connect you to whatever you need. And we will also then help you with fundraising. Fundraising is not a strict requirement. So if you want to build a project without any VC support, then you can do that. We are not going to force you into going onto a multi-million-dollar fundraising spree. You can do it without it. You can be completely community focused. You can reward contributors, whichever way you want to go. The only thing that we essentially care about is that you would launch a working product that is sustainable and that has has a user base, right? We want it to be used. We want this to be successful, obviously. So this is our incubation program. It's an entire curriculum. There's much more that goes into this than just these few bullet points. This is just to distill it down. We have a full, we have several pages with checkboxes and stuff like that. So it's a fully fleshed out incubation program, very professional, very serious. So this is what we would provide you with. Now, you may be wondering, okay, that's cool, but is there more? Is there more that we can do to support these projects, to support on-chain games? And yes, the answer is yes, there is more. I think the biggest goal of games is to build a long-lasting and thriving community, right? A game without a player base, without a good and active community is basically doomed to fail. So what can we do to help here? And it's really brilliant, because if you think about it, with on-chain games, all of the logic is on-chain in smart contracts. So all of the code, anybody can look at it, anybody can fork it, anybody can modify that, anybody can build on it, anybody can take out pieces of it like Lego blocks and build on top of it. It's essentially the same thing that you saw with DeFi in 2020, where it took off, where you had all of these protocols suddenly interacting with each other and building on top of each other. And so you can do the same with on-chain gaming. And one brilliant way to add value and to build that community is to have focused hackathons for your specific game. So that means having a hackathon for that game, rewarding people to build for it. And these people can just, take the game, they can add features to it, they can build on top of it, they can add new game mechanics, they can add new items to your game, they can come up with new game modes, they can do literally whatever they want, right? Their creativity is boundless. And if you build something, then you're automatically more invested into what you've built. And I think this is like the greatest way to build an active community, because these devs will automatically have an incentive to keep building on what they've already built. And that's just, that just keeps happening. It's like a snowball effect. And so if you want any evidence of why why this happens and how this happens, you can just look at the loot ecosystem, which has also found its way to Starknet. There's realms, there's crypts and caverns, and the loot ecosystem especially is just, a group of builders that keep building on stuff, and keep rewarding people for building. And if you want like a Web2 experience, example, it's Minecraft, right? Minecraft has an insane modding community, like it's absolutely nuts. And so we think this is one of the best ways we can support games in Matchbox, to just have a hackathon for them, get the entire community involved, build cool stuff, and then that's going to generate a lot of interest, and people will automatically be more invested into the games. So that's what we are doing in the future. We have not done this yet because most of the games are still in rather early stages, but as these games mature, it makes a lot of sense to hold these hackathons for these games. All right. The next point is something that's also very interesting. What do games need, right? Building a game is one part, but the other part is you have to actually deploy the game on the blockchain, and the game requires some kind of infrastructure to really plug into the blockchain. And so this infrastructure, it's pretty much everybody knows this, but games usually need some kind of NFT marketplaces. If they have any kind of staking, they need staking contracts. If they mint NFTs in an NFT sale, they need minting contracts. And there's a bunch of different DeFi, GameFi primitives, for example, an on-chain order book that you can use to trade in-game resources, things like that. So we thought to ourselves, at Matchbox, our goal is to make it as easy and as straightforward for on-chain games to launch, because building an on-chain game is a complex task in and of itself. So if we can help in other areas, then that is a big value add. And so our thought was, why don't we build some of that infrastructure for these games, so they only have to be busy with building their game itself, right? So they don't have to think about, okay, how am I going to integrate my NFTs with a marketplace? How am I going to build all of it infra, because it will already be there. Partly because the Starknet ecosystem already has some of the infrastructure, but partly because we think there are some key building blocks that are missing right now. And Matchbox, we want to build that internally and make it available to everybody on Starknet. But especially for these on-chain games. So Starknet is young. Let's build some of that infrastructure together. All right. Now, you may be wondering, how do I actually join the DAO, right? And this is also a very interesting area for us. It's very straightforward, but we do not structure this in the way that probably most other DAOs structure this. In many other DAOs, you would probably fill out an application form and you kind of talk about yourself, what you do and what you could do for the DAO. And then somebody reviews that, maybe the DAO votes on it, and then you become part of the DAO. Now, we see a few issues with that, because if we just ask everybody for an application form, then we are going to get a ungodly amount of airdrop hunters and bots and people that are just here, to hope for an airdrop or for a token or token sale or a whitelist spot or whatever. So we thought this isn't really the best way to go about this. So how do you join Matchbox? That's a great question. It's very easy if you do like the 6-step program. The first step is join our Discord. The second step is say hi on the Discord and introduce yourself. And that includes, telling us about yourself, about your background, about your skill set, what you want to do, what you want to build, what your area of expertise is. And as a next step, it would make sense for you to come to the weekly dev calls just to get an idea of, okay, what's actually going on here? Like, who are these people? What are they building? What kind of feedback do they need? What kind of issues do they run into? Things like that. Another thing you can do is to participate in our hackathons, and also generally just help out other DAO members, right? Just be active, participate in discussions, make yourselves known, basically. And why do we not give out an application form like right away? Because, like I mentioned, you're going to get airdrop hunters and stuff like that. We want to avoid that. And so if you do all of these things, or most of these things, or even just one thing, but you're super active in it, then automatically you're going to spend some amount of time in the MatchboxDAO Discord, right? You're going to make connections with people, you're going to make friends, you're going to have some kind of area of interest that you contribute to in discussions in whatever capacity. And at that point, we basically take note of you and we know, okay, this guy is showing up, this guy is passionate, this guy is doing things, right? And at that point, we can talk about, handing out some kind of application form for you to join. That's pretty much the process. And I know some people might be, disappointed in this, maybe, if you look at it from the area of like a retail user that's not a dev or doesn't have a deep understanding of on-chain games. But, MatchboxDAO is very much focused on developers at the moment, and we just care about, bringing in bright people and building interesting stuff. That's very much our main focus right now. In the future, this focus may shift a bit once our incubated games become more mature and get closer to launch. At that point, we will also most likely engage in a bit of marketing for these games, spreading the message. And at that point, we will be more retail centered, in at least in some capacity. So let's say you are someone who has an idea, or someone who has already built something, or someone who even has a company already founded, or even if you've fundraised already. How do I apply for incubation? We support you at basically any stage you're in. Even if you have already fundraised, we can still talk if you need support. And it's really easy. You literally just DM me or Yoni on Discord or Telegram or Twitter, and you just talk about your idea, your pitch, your project, your game idea, your company, whatever you have, and we will basically take it from there. Now you may be wondering, okay, I want more information about this whole incubation thing, right? And we just recently restructured all of it. So we are currently working on a deck for the incubation. So that means basically a PDF where we outline all of the information surrounding the incubation, all of the processes, what we expect from you, what you can expect from us, and so on. So this deck will most likely be ready maybe a week from now, hopefully. And then, we will obviously give this deck to people that are interested, and then that will already answer like a ton of questions for you. It's just a function of us just recently restructuring everything, and now we are doing the deck to present that to people. All right, so let's kind of summarize where all of this has gone and how we included the community basically every step of the way in this. To summarize, we currently have over 10 projects in incubation. We are in discussion with many more. So we're very excited for the future. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in Matchbox, a lot of things going on. We have done countless Twitter spaces, to talk about different concepts, to spread the message of on-chain gaming, to just get the message out and get Matchbox on people's radars. We currently have 2 flagship games that we give special attention to. If you're wondering, okay, what the hell are flagship games? Flagship games are basically games in our incubation program that we just give that extra attention to. So those are games that really take on-chain gaming very, very seriously, that really experiment with like very innovative concepts, and that we believe we should support in a more hands-on way. So they get special attention from us, just more time from us, and also more resources from us. So because we ultimately care about on-chain games, we want to really support them. And so if we find a project or game that does something really, really amazing, then we obviously want to give them that extra support. They need to pull that off. We have written countless Twitter threads, countless articles on our mirror, about different concepts, about soft to mint, which Topology was also involved in. It's just what you have to do to spread the message. We had our first hackathon that concluded last week. We had 55 submitted projects, which was really awesome to witness. It was really amazing. And at this point, a big shout out to everybody that took on the challenge of the hackathon. It's not easy to code in Cairo. It's not easy to get into it. I think unless you're a really experienced programmer. So that was really impressive, and it really surprised us. We have over 20 weekly dev calls now under our belt. And I can tell you from personal experience, because I moderate these calls, the amount of help that you get on these calls is really great. The projects I witnessed that ask people, what do you think about this? And we are approaching it in this way and in that way. And then they present this to the Matchbox community, and then people pitch in and say, oh, I've seen a project that does it exactly like this, and it failed horribly, right? And then you can kind of shift focus a bit. And just the value you get from talking to other people, to other game devs in Starknet, especially in the on-chain realm, I think the value is just really it's unprecedented. Like it's the biggest value add that you can actually have to connect with other people and talk to them about how to approach certain things and how to structure things. Yeah, so the biggest takeaway from this whole experience that we have done since the beginning of this year, when we started with Matchbox, the biggest takeaway is let people do what they want to do, right? If you get passionate people, then just let them do what they do. Like, don't try to force them into anything. Don't try to steer them into some direction. Give them ideological freedom over what they want to do, and let them play to their strengths, right? If somebody is a gifted Cairo dev, then let him take care of that, right? Let him come to the dev calls, let him talk to people if that's what he likes to do. If somebody is like a tokenomics expert, then let him be the tokenomics expert. Don't make him do something else, right? That's the biggest takeaway. Just let people do what they want to do, what they are passionate about, what they are gifted in, and you can expect great results. I think the most common thing that we have in Matchbox in this community is that we are all aligned on one common vision, and that vision is to push on-chain games to the next level on Starknet. We want to experiment. We want to do cool new things. We want to build stuff. We don't want games that can be shut down when the Amazon server that the code runs on gets shut down. No, we want games that are, immutable, that live on the blockchain, that will never be able to be turned off. We want games where people can come in and fork it and modify it and, build on it, add new features to it without having to ask anybody for permission on that. We want to do all of these things, and we want to experiment, and we want to push on-chain games to the next level on Starknet. That's what we want to do. That's what we're working on. And we see a lot of excitement around this. There's a ton of activity currently going on. The incubator is now in full steam. We're talking to lots of projects, lots of teams. We are even talking to projects that have so far only looked at like putting NFTs on chain. Projects that used to be just in the Web 2 space, but they're now looking to make their first move into Web 3. So there's a lot of interesting discussions happening, especially because you have to educate these people on, first of all, the benefits of crypto in general, and then the benefits of a secure rollup like Starknet in specific, which is always a challenge, but at some point you figure it out how to pitch it. But yeah, it's difficult. Like, I'm not going to lie, it's difficult to pitch Starknet and Cairo to a Web2 game builder, because there's like just so much that they have to understand and then take on to make the move. But we are in discussions with those kinds of people as well. So I would say there's a lot of excitement around this, and we are very excited for what the future holds. And yeah, that's the presentation. I'm going to take a look at the chat now for any questions. Okay, so there's one question. I'm going to read it. Okay, so basically, I cannot see your name, unfortunately, I think. But someone asked, how hard or easy would it be to mimic the MatchboxDAO system for other sectors, not just gaming, as I'm a single dev working on my Starknet project, which is not gaming related, but I don't have that feedback loop that you guys have. Whether it would be a good idea to come up with that or not. So that's a great question. I would just say right now in MatchboxDAO, we are very much focused on on-chain games, but we also support projects that are not games themselves. So for example, if you come up with, for example, an infrastructure project that has to do with on-chain gaming and that adds value to on-chain gaming, and that doesn't just copy an NFT marketplace, then we can look into supporting that as well, right? Because ultimately, what we want to do is we want to support on-chain gaming in general. Now, the most obvious path towards that is to incubate games and support them and give them this feedback process. But we also support other projects that are not specifically a game. So, for example, if you build an NFT marketplace with some kind of added feature, if you come up with anything that that you can do in Starknet that is unique and adds value, then we would be happy to talk to you to support that. Now, if you are not, if you're completely out of the scope of gaming and you're building like a something completely else, something completely different, and you want to emulate MatchboxDAO, then you can do that. But I think it's always good if your DAO has like a very specific goal in mind, because if you make it too general, you're just gonna have a ton of people come in, and it's very, very hard to structure that. It's already a challenge to structure this in this way with Matchbox, just focused on on-chain gaming. But if you generalize that, it's going to be that much harder. So if you are, if you find a specific niche that this could work for, then I don't see a reason why you shouldn't pursue that. But it is a challenge, and it is more difficult than it seems to create processes that involve people. It's very, very challenging, and we still have a lot of work to do on that front as well. All right. Someone asks a kind of relevant one. Can you share in the chat which app you use to produce the slides? The visual is fabulous. That is awesome. Thank you. I will pass that on to Edward, who actually created this presentation. I was just doing the content. The app is called Prezi. I think this is the link to that website, but it's definitely called Prezi. So there you go. If there are any other questions, please type it in chat. Or I'm not sure if you can talk in this session, but if you can't talk, then you're also welcome to take the mic and just talk to me. Okay, the question may be a bit comprehensive, but what do you think about mobile DApp games? That's also a good question. I think they have potential. I don't see a reason why you shouldn't do mobile games. Because essentially, if you have the backend nailed down in Starknet, then you can just port that to a mobile app and it should work. I think the biggest challenge here would be the UX, because it might take a while until wallets support mobile phones on Starknet, right? On Ethereum or Polygon or wherever, it's not a big problem. There's already wallets that can interface with mobile phones. But on Starknet, I don't think that's possible yet. So like ArgentX and Bravos, I don't think they support mobile phones yet. So that might still take a while. But in a general concept, if I don't see a reason why you shouldn't do mobile games. The only thing that I wouldn't do is create like the obvious Ponzi or cash cow games or stuff like that. Like we are not at all interested in that. But apart from that, I don't see a reason why you couldn't or shouldn't do a mobile game if that fits the game. You're welcome. Any other questions? Gonna wait 1 minute until we are at 45 minutes on the hour, and then I will conclude the session if there are no questions. Okay, there's another question. How do you match people or come up with other members to the team? It's very straightforward. It's similar to the process of joining the DAO itself. You just show up and you contribute. And once you do that, and we have a good feeling about you, then we can include you more into the core processes of the DAO. So to give you some examples, Yoni brought me on board very, very early on, where we didn't even have a DAO or a Discord server yet. But later examples of this would be we brought on board Ellie, who is doing some great work on growth. He organized the hackathon, and he also has, go-to-market experience for the games. Another member we onboarded is Edward. Edward is doing some content writing. He created this presentation for me, doing some of those stuff. And then just very recently, we onboarded a designer. He will redesign the Matchbox logo and create more on the design front for us. We have a bunch more on the content team who write interesting articles. For example, we have Hank, who is also a part of the Dark Forest DAO. He's writing some long form articles for Matchbox. So essentially, the answer to this is just show up to us. Tell us about yourself, show us what you can do, and then just contribute. And if it's if it adds value to Matchbox and OnChain Games, then we would be interested to talk to you. It's very straightforward like that. We don't give out membership based on status or whatever. We want people to contribute, and when you contribute, then you have more avenues open to you in Matchbox. I hope that answers your question. All right, any other question? Gonna count down from 10, 9, 8. Okay, what do you think? Sure, go ahead. Okay, what do you think makes on-chain games superior to off-chain games in the short term and in the long term? Actually, I think in the short term, it doesn't make them superior because the UX is harder to pull off. Coming up and creating an on-chain game is harder and more complex than doing it off-chain. So in the short term, it's actually harder, and I don't know if superior or inferior is the right word, but it's definitely harder. But to talk about some of the benefits of on-chain gaming, so there's a lot to talk about. On-chain games, if you put the code and the game logic, everything on-chain on Starknet, then nobody can shut the game down, right? If the creator of the game decides 1 year from now, oh, well, the game doesn't generate revenue from me anymore, or I'm not interested anymore, or whatever else, then he can't shut down the game, right? You see this with online games, especially that, online games that have aged a bit, that maybe lost a part of the community, they just get shut down. The servers get shut down. The IP is restricted, so you can't come in and fork it, and then the game is essentially dead. There's no way for you to ever play that game again. With on-chain games, that cannot happen. Another part of this is security, right? Everything, every action, every computation, every logical step is computed on-chain, and then a validity proof is generated to prove to you that this has mathematical integrity, right? So essentially, you can weed out cheating almost entirely if you encode all of the logic on chain. That's another big thing that you can get from on-chain games. Another big thing is composability and interoperability. And this is a benefit that currently is hard to pull off, but in the future, once we have found a method of doing that, which is very hard, but once we have found a way to really capitalize on the composability and interoperability, then that's something that you also cannot do in that way with off-chain games. Off-chain games do not share a state machine with each other, so they cannot interact with each other on a atomic level. But on-chain games can do that because everything will run on Starknet, so each smart contract can call each other smart contract on an atomic level. So you have incredible interoperability and incredible composability. You can compose smart contracts, you can make them interoperable, you can modify them, fork them, build on them. You can use them like Lego blocks, essentially. Now, you can't do it with off-chain games, but you can do this with on-chain games. But I have to say, it is very difficult to pull off. Like, there's a lot of smart people working on this sort of problem, but it is hard to pull off because different games use different assets, use different logic. So standardization, I think, will be playing a big role in this, and it is hard to pull off, very, very hard. But at some point in the future, we will see some kind of initiative, some kind of effort that will make this work at some level, and I think that will be a breakthrough moment for on-chain games for sure. You're welcome. Any other questions? Just type in chat, and I will know that you have a question. Otherwise, I will conclude this session. All right. If there are no more questions, then I would like to thank you all for coming to the session. I think this was the last session for Starknet House, if I'm not mistaken. I would like to thank Topology and all of you for coming, and Topology for organizing this. I hope you learned a lot, maybe not necessarily from me, but from all of the events, because I think there were some events that were very technical, which is also great. But I think you can learn a lot more from those. But this is really with Matchbox, this is really just to illustrate that people ultimately play the biggest role in a DAO, and you have to come up with some kind of system that can include them. If you can't do that, then people will just leave and everything falls apart, basically. But anyway, thank you all for attending. Thank you to Topology for this opportunity, and I hope you all have a great day, and goodbye.